Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question, and I hope I don't come across to be too positive, but I mean, to be very honest, part of the reason why I stopped watching the news is because it's very negative. I mean, all you see is tragedy and deaths, and so I'm curious if you are still seeing that negative news is getting the rating that it used to get. Is there any efforts to try and bring more positive news? A lot of the younger generation is watching more podcasts and stories, and so I mean, are you collecting data on that kind of content?
We have tools at our disposal every day. Like through Nielsen, there's a tool called Graphics, and I can pull up everybody's late newscast, and I can see on a graph when people leave our newscast.
Minute by minute.
Yeah, minute by minute. When they leave us, if they go to Channel 9, if they go to 7, if they go to bed, because they turn it off. So you get a good sense of that. That has always been an issue for decades now in our business. And it's really interesting because there's been different experiments around the country with people not covering crime or not covering death and destruction, and their ratings sink. So it's really hard. I mean, you've got so many people who want so many different things out of television news. So all you can do in that is, try to make the conscious efforts. And I know Byron has done this in his career, and I've done it, where you look at your first block of your news and you're like, no. We've got to change that. There's way too much crime up there. We got to put that reporter on a different story because it's too much. But the problem is, if you've got a rapist loose in Centennial, those people want to know that. So it's that dance and that happy medium. I think that Byron has built a fantastic career in news on doing investigative journalism and winning Murrows and Peabodys and all the things that you saw Channel 7 do. That was Byron. He brought that here. I've done a lot of investigative, but I've built it now on the Problem Solver brand, which truly is going after people who are screwing other people, holding them accountable, and getting help for the people who were screwed over. So I think we all, in our own ways, try to find ways to make it more meaningful, because we don't sit in a room and go, woohoo, there's a lot of crime today, let's put it on TV. It's really hard. But I do understand why some people have tuned out. But it's as diverse as this room on what story would be something each of you would want to watch tonight. It's really hard.
I will tell you, though, she stopped well short of something she's doing there, which is being completely modest. When I worked with Holly, she touched on the Problem Solver brand. And the way it was described to me is, look, we're going to use our powers for good. And she did this very successfully when she was in Seattle. And the thing that really crystallized it for me was, and you said, and I can't believe you didn't say this here, but
Elsie?
Yeah, no, well, that too. But it was, look, if there's a fire, we're going to cover the fire. We're going to cover it, but we're going to take a different tactic, and you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing, because it's very impressive and actually speaks exactly to what she's asking.
He's talking about the fire example.
Yep.
Everybody rolls in for the morning show. Everybody puts their masks up. The reporters stand in front of the burning house. The shows are over. Everybody puts their masks down. They get in their car and they go on to the next thing. An example in Seattle is we had that happen. We all covered the fire. Everybody left. And here's this family with 3 little kids. They're in the little white outfits that you get, I guess, from the Salvation Army or from the Red Cross. They don't have a stitch of clothing, but these little paper outfits. And they're standing in the middle of the street looking at their house going, we don't know what to do next. So we pile them into the van and we take them to Target and we buy them all the clothes and all the stuff they need, and then we call up, and this is where I go to the dark side and use the salespeople. Call him up and say,
to get free stuff.
It's, who do we have as a client who might help us put them up in a hotel for a week, or who can we rely on who might give them a car? I should have brought this story on Elsie. It's my favorite story in Seattle. So I don't know why. One of our producers is in Craigslist. God knows what they were looking for. And they found this story about Elsie. And she's this 87-year-old woman, had a horrible life. I mean, had been abused by a stepfather and just horrible life. And she married this man who she'd been married to for 60 years. Love of her life. Only man in her whole life who ever treated her well. And he died. And Elsie made a promise to him. She said that come hell or high water, she would bury him. She would not cremate him. For whatever reason, he didn't want to be cremated. So Elsie went on, with the help of a caregiver, she went on to Craigslist, and she said, I'm selling all my worldly goods. And on Saturday, you can come to my apartment, and you can buy anything in my apartment. So we sent one of our better reporters over there to do the story, and he's walking through the apartment with Elsie, and Elsie looks at the picture of Jesus, and she says, "No, I can't. That's the one thing I can't part with. Can't part with the picture of Jesus. But you can have all my plastic flowers and my VHS tapes of Bonanza and all this stuff that you would look at it and go, oh, come on, really?" So we just did the story on Here's Elsie, and here's what Elsie's doing. It was on a Friday night. I'll never forget it. We had a Problem Solver Fund so that any of you could go to our website and donate a few bucks to help Elsie get her husband buried. We're sitting there watching this site, and it just kept going. And it was $2 and $5 and $10 from people, and then it was $1,000, and then it was $10,000. And then the Nordstrom family, based in Seattle, Jeannie Nordstrom called up and said, I'm going to give you $10,000, but don't tell anybody it was me. By the end of the night, we raised $87,000. We needed, I think, $6,000 to get 2 plots because we wanted to get one for Elsie, too. I mean, while we were doing it. So
She wasn't a young chicken.
no, Elsie was not a young chicken. She died, I'm convinced, of a broken heart 6 months later after he died, with 2 beautiful plots on a hilltop in Seattle and a foundation in their name for elderly people who didn't have the means to be buried. That's the power of our medium, and that's what I mean when I say we can use our power for good.
Yeah, and I think that this issue of impact is probably what drives us the most in terms of being in the business. The ability on the day of the tsunami to stand out in front of the TV station and tell people we're going to raise money for the Red Cross and get $40,000 in 2 days.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of impact, I think. To answer, but to kind of go back to that question, which is, I'm not sure it's ever going to look like you want it to. And that's really what's happened in our business. We suddenly lost control. And you got it all. And that's made it more difficult.
I don't know who to go to. Green guy, because it's St. Patty's Day.
I know it's a really competitive industry, and there's, obviously we vote with our dollars.
Yeah.
And, what we watch and everything. But I mean, do you guys have industry conferences where you get together and talk about stuff like this, and hey, let's come up with some innovative ways
Oh, yeah.
to
All the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to one in New Orleans next week.
Well, look, I will tell you, when I took over in 2008, the first thing I did was cut a helicopter deal with Channel 9 to save money. And then 2 years later, we cut a deal with all the stations in town. I'm sure you know that by now because it's been going on a while. There's only one helicopter flying around town now for all the stations. We used to all have our own. We were all spending about $1.2 million a year on flying a helicopter around. And in the end, we'd look up and realize they're flying circles around each other all the time.
They were.
Right? And the fact is there was no competitive advantage because the pilots talked to themselves. They talked to each other all the time.
It's like,
Where are you
yeah,
heading?
Joe,
Well,
come
I'm
over
heading
here.
down to I-25 in Lincoln. Well, why are you telling him that? Well, hell, I'm not flying in the air with some other pilot who doesn't know where I'm going, right? So there are ways that the businesses work together. All the stations locally and all the radio stations are members of the Colorado Broadcasters Association, and we have obviously common threads in lobbying and efforts to help the business. So it happens. It happens.
You had your hand up first.
Yeah, I spent most of my life working at agencies, creative agencies, digital agencies, most recently. But my passion, my real passion that is behind all that is storytelling. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I took, after a really bad agency experience where I was at an agency that went out of business, I took a turn and spent 4 years working in local news as a photojournalist and soundtrack operator for a 24-hour station. Which was great because I really got to put together the whole story myself and did a lot of anchor packages, which I'm sure I read. So I love the medium. So I'm sort of prefacing what my point is. However, I think there's this dire need of innovation in the medium, and I think the key to it is what you just said a moment ago. Is all brands struggle now with this problem, is that the relationship between brands, and I consider news stations a brand, they struggle with this idea that they don't have control over it anymore. think somewhere, and as a lover of local news and what it can do and the impact that it can have, I think the innovation lies somewhere in the fact that you have to give people content and on their terms so that they can select whether they want to see the house that's on fire or the it bleeds kind of stuff. Because there are still people that like that, obviously, the ratings do that. But also people like Jerry that want to skip it and watch the stories that are impactful. And so I guess there's not really a question there.
No,
I think that's what you get on digital now.
I think you also share the same thing that you share the same love that we have about the business, and that is the storytelling. Mm-hmm. I mean, the story of Elsie is beautiful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you live for those things, and you wish you could tell more of them. The stations are never going to be staffed at that level. The money's just not there for it. You just can't create that kind of content. So that's going to be the struggle.
I guess my idea is that there has to be a radical sea change because the truth is the size of the market is dwindling every year, right? I mean,
Yep.
I'm not the bearer of bad news. You guys know this. So I guess my idea is that I just think you have to rethink how you tell the story. I mean, maybe it's not even your own website anymore. Maybe it's through social, through community involvement, sponsorships, rather than the kind of traditional thing. I don't have the answers. I'm just hoping that there is an innovation that smart people like yourselves in the industry can take that and use what's out there and use that knowledge that individuals have control over your brand rather than the.
Well, technology's helped us. Technology's, I mean, it used to take 3 people to tell a TV story. You had a camera person, a sound man, and a grip. Somebody to carry the wires. And now you can do it with just one person. Technology's helped us to focus resources on the storytelling aspect of what we do. I mean, I think, Holly's greatest challenge, I think, moving forward, is this idea of how do you make sure in the digital space that we're in now that you're telling people the kind of information they need to know so they can get about their daily lives and understand what's going on. The big thing is you want to know is anything really big happen that I should know about, right? You'll figure out the rest. And when did it happen? I want to know it when it happened. And then this other challenge is, I think what Holly's really hit on is this, how then do you build compelling television shows, newscasts, if that's what you want to call them, or compelling television shows to get people to still come to that medium to watch, where you're still collecting the majority of your dollars. That's, I think, the real challenge on what to do, and it's tricky.
I agree. You know someone who's figured it out, I think? ESPN. If you on my ESPN app, I can pick all my favorite teams, all the things I'm interested in, and so I get alerts to my phone directly.
Sure.
Tell me when the Denver Broncos get a new quarterback, and I can open up that and instantly watch that story. Like, there's an answer there.
Sure.
Sure. New York Times is great for it as well. I get a hit every morning. Here are the stories that you need to know before moving into your day. I know you've got a Guinness coming, so let's do 2. I know we got to get you here.
Yes, this gentleman has been waiting.
Well, I was thinking about Elsie's story. Did you tell that story on the channel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was done in Seattle.
It was done, yeah.
And can you see a station that does all that all the time, just positive news?
A woman who I think was a great woman in our industry named Carol Nealon, she's since passed away, tried to do that in Austin. I think she had more success than anybody else has in the country, but at the end of the day, it didn't work.
Just because people are more fascinated by negative news than impactful positive news?
I don't know that I would go that far.
Yeah.
I think you're not going to care about a double shooting in a bad neighborhood in downtown Denver. You're going to care about a shooting 2 blocks over in your neighborhood because you don't know what that means. Is there somebody scary on the loose? I saw that guy walk his dog every day. Why did somebody shoot him? So that's why it's really hard. You will care about that story probably if it's in your neighborhood, but you won't because you live 20 miles away and it's just another horrible crime.
That's the challenge. We lived it all the time. I mean, friends in your own neighborhood, if there were sirens or lights in your neighborhood, who was the first person that you'd always ask? You.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on? What's happening?
If you had a
Could it work?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to try it now. Carol tried it in the 80s. Now with millennials, I think they're a kinder, gentler people. They might actually watch it. I don't know.
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, you could do it. I mean, the beauty is that nowadays, somebody in their garage could do it if they wanted to. It's called a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And they go out and use with their cell phone and go out and create that kind of and put those kind of stories on a YouTube channel. I mean, I hadn't Googled it, but maybe one of us ought to at the end. I bet it's there.
When you aired that, how did it go on the graph?
The Elsie story shot through the roof.
So it did, so
Yeah. I mean, people want that. You know what's the most interesting thing to me in the last 10 years truly is, and John and I
know what
talked
you're
about it
saying,
when I
yeah.
brought the problem solvers here. People want to help. I mean, look at GoFundMe now is just taken off. And it's given me hope because I've covered a lot of horrendous things in my career. And I think one of the best things that I've seen as I've gotten into my 34th year of this is the human spirit's out there. People really want to help people in need. And I don't know that we tapped into that before, and that's why I like the problem solvers, because we can tap into it. You know, we all watch a story. If you guys watched Elsie's story, you should Google it. Como TV, K-O-M-O-T-V, Eric Johnson, and just put in Elsie. There's no way you're not going to cry. There are 2 stories. You have to watch the first one and then the follow-up. People watch that. There's amazing compassion. And with that comes wanting to help.
We did a sizzle reel or a promotional reel for Holly's Problem Solvers, and Jeremy Hubbard, our anchor, did the whole thing. And at the end of it, he said, he goes like, you can't buy this kind of publicity. So from the sales side of it, I'm like, okay, let's get that off of it, because yes, you can buy that. We'll sell that to you. But all kidding aside, we kept that in there, and it was a lot of fun as the head of the sales department to be able to go out to companies. I do agree with Holly. A lot of people want to help. Companies want to help. And so when we would have a great story and we would go and say, hey, King Supers, can you help us? Sports Authority helped us with a Tim Tebow story a while back. And every time we would go up to New York and talk to the folks there, they would literally bring that up. So I'm in agreement. I think they do want to help.
I do think, and what I think all of us are most proud about is the impact that we can have. Mm-hmm. But the business it's a business. I used to talk, look, because I was running the station when the Rocky Mountain News shut down. And I used to tell the staff all the time, here was a wonderful newspaper who had an editor, John Temple, who was very forward-thinking, that was well-disciplined, but had a lousy business model. It was hemorrhaging money. It just couldn't make it anymore. And so I talked a lot about the fact that look, this great journalism that they were doing, and the same great journalism we're doing, if we don't figure out the business model, it's going to go away. And the only thing that scared me the most is on Monday, the first day the Rocky wasn't delivered on the newspaper, on your front porch, everybody's life went on. Mm-hmm. Everyone carried on and moved past it. So it's a funny thing. It's a fickle thing. We are still driven by ratings. I can remember a day where when The Bachelor first started, and Trista, who was right, and she married to Ryan, and Ryan lived in Vail, and Ryan's parents lived in Fort Collins. And I remember we had a great investigative story that night. And after the weather, we were going to interview Ryan's parents. And so the news started off like this, and then it did like this. And that's when Ryan's parents were interviewed, right? But look, I think there's a mix that can happen. This, as I tried to remind my own news staff to say, why did we do that? I said, well, because I think people would be interested in listening to Ryan's parents. But it's the same television station that in 2002 ran a 12-minute story at the top of their show to talk about sex assaults at the Air Force Academy. That 18 months later ended in a change of command at the Air Force Academy and congressional hearings, and took down the sign, "Bring us your men," at that academy to change the culture inside that. So it's there. It's all there. Elsie's story and solving problems and investigative work that has real change for positive in the community. It's getting people engaged in a way where you can create a good enough business to keep it going.
John, lightning round.
round. Real quick question, real
Done.
quick answers.
Yep.
With consolidation, what happens to small market stations? Are they going away?
They're getting gobbled up. It's kind of like Pac-Man. Wait until the Spectrum auction occurs in the fall or next year. You're going to see a lot of TV stations, small TV stations, go away because the cell companies and.
How do you expect them to get those people in those markets to get news? Any news that's available.
They'll probably consolidate.
Yep.
There's markets, if you go to Honolulu right now, all three of the major affiliates are in one newsroom. I think it's all three. Is it four?
You've got a Channel 20 in Denver run by Channel 9, so a very small station run by a much larger one.
Yeah. Gentleman in the back, you.
How important as the anchor then with your news background? Because there's a change coming there too. We're seeing that. There's no more on the national level, the Walter Cronkite. That's why we watched it.
Yeah.
We saw that here with Ed Sardella for a long, long time. And all of a sudden, Mark Holbrook is gone. He's retired. He walks out, and they all applaud him. The guy was a great guy.
Yeah.
Left an impact. And what I see, being in the broadcast industry as a broadcaster for the St. Louis Cardinals, by the way,
Yep.
and the Rockies,
Yep.
was the fact that those anchors, I'm seeing a bunch of young kids getting chances.
Don't they look like they're 14 at Channel 9? I'm just saying.
They're just
They do. They're only 18, I think.
Yeah.
How important is it for you? Because like ESPN, you're talking about ESPN. ESPN makes it because of Sports Center. That's the cash cow. Is Sports Center.
Oh, yeah.
It isn't all the other stuff. It's the Sports Center.
It's also $4 billion in retrans revenue as well, that satellite and cable operators are paying them.
But my point to you guys, my question is, how important is the anchor of tomorrow for you to build your name?
I still believe it's important because I think you make a lot of choices based on the people you like. I think when Carl Akers was in town, Ed Sardella was just starting out and was in sports. So there's always one that comes after them. And I think it's our jobs to try to find the right people for the market. It's really interesting because Tribune right now, the company I'm with, is making a really concerted effort to try to hire people who are from the city that they're in. I think that's one of the reasons I'm here. I wanted to come home, and they wanted me to come home because they knew I knew.
I wanted you first, though.
He did. We were supposed to work together.
I was recruiting her at the same time Peter was.
And I would have gone with him, except he decided to leave.
I know. Sorry.
You just hope you find the right person, and you try to find people who have ties and who are going to stay and who don't have stars in New York or LA in their eyes because you want them to invest in the community. It's not easy, though.
You can make an argument that personality may matter more moving forward. It's just the personality is going to look different and feel different than it did 20 years ago. I mean, I brought Mike Landis back in 2002.
I had lunch with him today.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Is he okay?
Yeah, he's okay.
Okay, good. And then I brought Mike Nelson over from 9 to 7 in 2004, right? So it matters, not like it used to. I think it plays a larger part of your brand, who you are. We talked about this brand. I think personality will matter. It's just going to look and feel a lot different than what it did 20 years ago.
Yeah, last question.
Is there any, one of the frustrations that I've had in my circle or whatever is that notion of agenda-driven news versus mood news. Is that what about that going forward, especially in the political climate and all that? Is that, how do you
Don't-
Are you talking about point of view type stuff?
Yes, exactly, where there's a big thing.
What Fox News Channel has done to our industry. Don't get me going.
Yeah.
The local news is not like that. And Byron may have a different opinion, I don't know. Fox came out and said we're going to counter MSNBC and we're going to be biased and we're going to hire Roger Ailes. I know, because at the time I was in Washington, D.C. and I found a file. And one of the executives, I believe it was Roger, said to Tony Snow, who used to do a show on Fox News Channel, go hire all the conservative people you can find. To a large degree, that has hurt us greatly. Because I know now, being back with a Fox affiliate, even though I'm owned by Tribune and have nothing to do with Fox News Channel, we get painted with that brush. You damn well don't want to drive a van with Fox on it to Boulder. It's ugly, I'm telling you.
I've never thought of that.
They egg them.
Did they really?
Yes. So, it's hard because I think on a local level you'll find that we don't have that agenda. We're a brand, as one of you guys said before. We are absolutely a brand in our communities. And we're ingrained in our communities. We're not out there trying to come up with some political agenda. We're trying to do the best we can not to have a political agenda, to make sure we balance it. But that's really hard when you have cable news that can go ahead and have a bias and get away with a bias, and then you get painted with that brush. And then you get the people at the Trump rally saying kill the media because you're all biased scum. And honestly, we're not. You could sit in an editorial meeting, and it's a diverse group of people, and they're the older ones at one end of the table saying you should care about the mortgage rates and the gas prices, and the kids at the other end going, but isn't there a big St. Patty's Day party downtown we should cover tonight? So it's a give and take, and it's a lot of conversation with a lot of different people. That said, I don't think it's nearly diverse enough. It's mostly white people who come from suburbia. That's something we all need to work on. But we're not biased. We do everything we can to try not to be, and it's too bad we're painted with that brush.
I think this is where the loss of control has sort of come into it, right? But look, every story has a point of view, right? Not a bias, but a point of view. And your ability now to go get whatever story you want with your point of view is now a choice you have, whereas before it wasn't. It wasn't a choice. And it is. And I think that's what drives this discussion around bias and point of view. I mean, when you sit around an editorial table, everybody feels differently about certain things. Now, I would also argue that birds of a feather flock together. So there is some common thing among these folks standing around an editorial table in terms of why they're there or the impact that they want to have. But everything starts with a point of view. I think really what it's been difficult is because now you can go get your point of view.